the Grouchy Nerd.
Alright, you antisocial weirdos, it's time to learn a game that plays at the ideal player count. 1. Spirit Island, designed by R. Eric Royce and published by Greater Than Games, is a hand management and area control game which pits you as a powerful and fearsome deity worshipped by the island's native Dahan population against an invading force trying to colonize the island. It's up to you to scare them off before they poison your lands and drive your spiritual presence from the island instead. The game is played over a series of rounds, and your goal in Spirit Island is to rid your land of the invading colonizers, either by destroying them or making them so afraid that they flee your lands. Spirit Island is a cooperative game and can be played solo one of two ways, either true solo, only controlling one spirit, or controlling multiple spirits as though controlled by multiple players. Now, I almost always play every game true solo if that's an option, and I play this game true solo probably 90% of the time, but if there was one game that I would recommend at least trying to play multi-handed, it's this one. The spirits provide interesting interactions with each other, but do keep in mind that's going to make for a much longer and more complicated game, which might not be what you're looking for at the end of a long day. Now, the only functional difference when playing true solo is that powers that target other spirits can target yourself, though if there are any bonuses from targeting other spirits, you're not going to get those. Have any other videos made a joke about how it's white people who are doing all the colonizing? All of them. Oh. Huh. So I should make one? No, I know, I shouldn't. Place the Invader board on one side of your play area. Place 4 fear markers per spirit in the fear pool. Shuffle the fear cards and draw 9. Place 3 on the fear deck space, then place the terror level 3 divider on top of them. Then 3 more cards, then the terror level 2 divider, and then the last 3 cards. You begin at terror level 1, which has a victory condition. You immediately win if at any time there are no invaders left on the map, which is nigh on impossible. However, as you progress, you'll earn fear cards. Each time you uncover a new terror level divider, that new terror level and its victory condition take effect immediately, meaning you might immediately win the game anytime you uncover one of these dividers. At terror level 2, you win if there are no cities or towns on the map. At terror level 3, you just need no cities on the map. And if ever you earn the last fear card, you immediately win the game. Make the Invader deck by first separating the Invader cards by the numbers on the back, 1, 2, and 3. Remove from the game 1 card from each pile at random, then place the cards face down so that the 1s are on top of the 2s, on top of the 3s, and place them here. Each Invader card shows a land type, or possibly types, indicating where they will take their actions, depending on where that card is along this track. The flag icons on the Stage 2 cards can be ignored for now. They're not used in this standard setup of the game. Eventually, you'll take a random Blight card and place it here with the Healthy Island side face up. But while you're getting comfortable with the game, just use the Blight instructions printed on the board itself, which is to add 5 Blight per spirit. If you are playing with a Blight card, it's going to flip to the Blighted Island side when all of your starting Blight is gone. Congratulations, your game just got much harder. But regardless of whether or not you're using that Blight card, there has been a slight tweak to this step. You're going to add 1 more Blight to either the board or the Blight card. And that's not 1 more Blight per spirit, it's just 1 more Blight. So this is kind of a big deal in true solo, because if you ever run out of Blight from this spot, you immediately lose the game. Yeah, buried the lead on that one. It was for dramatic effect, and it worked. Gather the cities, towns, explorers, Dahan, and energy coins. Though if you're looking to conserve table space, you'll probably only need about a quarter of the total supply. Randomly pick an island board for each spirit and place it or them next to the Invader board. If you are playing with multiple spirits, you're going to arrange them like this for 2 spirits, like this for 3 spirits, or like this for 4. Island boards are broken up into land types: jungle, sand, mountain, and wetland. Lands that share a border are adjacent even if they're not on the same island board. There's also an ocean space, and all the lands adjacent to the ocean space are coastal lands. The rest are inland lands. There's also a thematic side of the board, which is way harder. Like, how can this be any fun harder? But I do know that some of you have a near sadomasochistic aversion to fun, so there you go. Have at it, I guess. Populate the board by placing cities, towns, Dahan, and Blight as indicated in the spaces on the board. The Blight in this step should come from the box, not your initial supply of Blight. So if you're playing a true solo game and you're not using a Blight card, you should have a total of 7 Blight in play right now. For your first game, maybe for your first few games, choose one of the 4 low complexity spirits and take their spirit panel as well as their power progression card, unique power cards, and all of the markers of one color, which you'll use to mark your divine presence on the island. Find the minor and major power cards named on your power progression card and set them aside. You won't need the rest of the power cards if you're using the power progression card, so you can just put those back in the box. However, once you're more comfortable with the game, you can skip the power progression cards and simply shuffle the minor and major power cards into separate decks and place them nearby, leaving room for a discard pile for each deck. Player cards have a name, a cost to play, the speed of the effect, either fast with a red bird or slow with a blue turtle, a range which shows how many lands away from your presence or a sacred site that effect can reach, what type of land that power can target, the card's effect, elements that the card generates, and some player cards have an elemental threshold, an additional effect you may use if the required elements have been generated. A note on elements: they're never stored. You must use them in the same turn that they're generated, but they're also never consumed, so you can use the same elements to meet multiple elemental thresholds.
Also, each spirit's elements are their own, so if you are playing with multiple spirits, the elements that they generate are not shared among all spirits.
Range tells you how far the land you wish to target may be from a land you control, though while some powers only need to be in range of presence, others, usually more powerful ones, need to be in range of sacred sites, which is a land with at least 2 of your presence tokens.
Some powers target spirits, denoted by this icon. Remember that in true solo, you may play powers that target another spirit on yourself, but you don't gain any corresponding bonuses.
The back of your panel shows the spirit's name and backstory, as well as some general tips and strategy for that particular spirit. Follow any setup instructions on the back of your spirit panel that include placing presence on 1 or more lands on the island. If you're playing with multiple spirits, each spirit will set up on their own island board, but it is just one island, so spirits will begin influencing other boards as well as the game progresses. Flip your board to the front and place the remaining presence tokens on the dashed spaces along the tracks, leaving the 2 leftmost spaces uncovered. Also, take note of special rules for this spirit listed here. As you play, your spirit will grow in power. Each turn you'll have a growth phase, and your options for that growth are shown here. Unless noted otherwise, you'll choose just one growth option and take all of the indicated actions. Add a presence by taking a presence token from either presence track and placing it on the island, but note that this placement has a range. So with a range of 1, you could place it on a land that already has a presence, making it a sacred site, or you could place it on any land adjacent to a land with a presence on it, because that would be 1 land away. If ever you may add presence to the board, but you have no presence left on your panel, you may instead rearrange that much presence around the board. Gain energy by gaining energy from the supply. Energy is kind of like your currency. You're going to spend that energy to play your power cards. This one is to gain a new power card. If you're using the power progression card, simply take the next card on the list and add it to your hand. But once you've moved past the power progression cards, you'll draw the top 4 cards of either the minor or major power decks, your choice. Choose one of the 4 cards to add to your hand and discard the other 3 into that power deck's discard pile. Though whether you're using the power progression card or not, anytime you gain a major power card, you have to forget one of your other powers. If the forgotten card is a major or minor power, discard it to its appropriate discard pile. Or slide the card under your spirit panel if it was one of your starting powers. The card you forget can come from your discard pile or your hand, but I genuinely don't know why you would ever do that. In the relatively rare event that you gain a major power card mid-turn, you can also choose to forget one of the cards you have in play, though if you do, you're also going to lose the elements on that card, and if you haven't used its effect yet, well, now you don't get to. Reclaiming cards means taking all the cards from your discard pile and adding them back to your hand. Reclaiming is the only way to get those discarded cards back. You can't just pick them up because you've run out, but do note that it's also a very inefficient growth option, so try to do it as little as possible. The top presence track shows how much energy you'll gain each turn. The card plays track is the maximum number of cards you can play each turn. As you add presence to the island, you'll uncover higher numbers and therefore gain more energy and be able to play more cards. But these are not cumulative. You'll use the value in the rightmost uncovered space. Some spirits have elements on their tracks. Once these elements have been uncovered, they're generated each spirit phase. Still, other spirits may have a reclaim 1 space. Each spirit phase, this would allow you to reclaim a a single used card from your discard pile. Each spirit has innate powers depicted in this area. These powers are free in that they don't cost any energy to play them, but the elements shown here must have been generated this turn. Innate powers also have a speed, slow or fast, a range, and land types you can target. They have a base effect and further threshold effects that are resolved in order from the top if you've met the required elemental thresholds. Though if an innate power says instead, this new level replaces the one above it. So in this case, if you'd played enough cards that you had 4 moon, 3 flame, and 2 air, you would first gather an explorer into a land, then destroy up to 2 explorers from that same land, each for a fear, then do 3 additional damage in that land, divided as you see fit, generating even more fear. You may choose not to resolve an elemental threshold even if you have the elements necessary, but you cannot trigger the same elemental threshold twice even if you have double the required elements. Last, flip the top card of the Invader deck and place 1 Explorer in each of the matching land types indicated on the board. Then place that card in the build space, but do not flip up the next Explore card. Each turn plays thusly. The Spirit phase. Perform a growth action by choosing one of the growth options from the top of your Spirit panel and resolve each of the actions depicted. You must resolve them all, but you may choose the order in which you resolve them. For instance, this option would allow you to gain 3 energy as well as place a presence on the board up to 3 lands away from a presence already on the board. Next, gain energy based on the rightmost revealed number shown on this track. Then you can play power cards. You may play a maximum number of cards as shown on your card plays presence track. Place and pay for each card you wish to play this turn, but don't resolve any effects just yet. Remember that you've also generated the elements shown on these cards. Move on to the fast power phase. Resolve your fast powers, the red bird powers, on power cards and your innate powers if the elemental threshold has been met. You may take these actions in any order, but fast powers must be resolved during the fast powers phase. You can't save one to resolve during the slow powers phase. To gather means bring something into that land from an adjacent land or lands. Push moves something from that land to an adjacent land. Defending will negate that much damage done by the invaders to both the land and the Dahan in that land, which we'll go over in a bit. Damage done to invaders in a given land can be divided however you see fit. Explorers have 1 health, towns have 2, and cities have 3. You can keep track of damaged cities and towns by placing them on their sides or backs. If invaders are removed or destroyed, they're placed back in their respective supplies. Destroying a town generates 1 fear, and destroying a city will generate 2 fear. This symbol on a card will also generate the indicated number of fear. Each time fear is generated, move 1 of the fear tokens from the fear pool to the generated fear area. Anytime all fear tokens are in the generated fear area, reset the tokens and place the top fear card in the earned fear cards area. If you've generated more fear than there are tokens left in the fear pool, take the last token, reset the fear pool, and draw your fear card, then continue to place fear in the generated fear area until you've taken all of your generated fear. In general, on any card, if one part doesn't apply or can't be done, just ignore that part of the card and do everything else that you can do. Also, you don't have to use a card's effect. If maybe you just wanted to use it for the elements it generated, that's fine. Unless a power states otherwise, it's only going to target 1 land. So if you play a power that allows you to destroy 3 explorers, all 3 of those explorers must be in the same land. If your island only has lands with 1 explorer, then that power will only destroy 1 explorer. When you've resolved all the fast actions that you can or wish to, move on to the Invader phase. If you are using a Blight card and the card has flipped to the Blighted Island side, you're going to follow the instructions on that card first. Spoilers, it's bad. It's real bad. Next, resolve any earned fear cards 1 at a time by following the instructions indicated by your current terror level, then discard the fear card. If ever an action you take from a fear card causes you to earn another fear card, it moves to the bottom of the earned fear cards pile and is resolved this round. The terror level increases immediately when you take the last fear card on it. So anytime you set a new terror level, be sure to check the board to see if maybe you just won, and you do win if ever you take that last fear card. Then the invaders are going to ravage the land type on the invader card in the space marked Ravage. Now this isn't going to happen in the first round because there is not a card in the Ravage space yet, but there will be on subsequent turns. Invaders in each matching land type will first damage the land. Each explorer will do 1 damage, each town does 2 damage, and each city does 3 damage. Though this damage all happens at the same time, so if a land has a town and a city, it's not going to do 2 damage then 3 damage, it's just going to do 5 damage. Which is good, because anytime 2 or more damage is done to a land, place a blight from the board to that land. Anytime blight is added to a land, any spirit with presence on that land will lose 1 presence from that land. Presence lost this way is removed from the game, and if ever you have no presence left on the island, you lose. So don't let that happen. If ever you have to add blight to an already blighted land, the blight will cascade. Place an additional blight on an adjacent land. Now, a note for all you pandemic players, that's not on each adjacent land. It's 1 blight on 1 adjacent land, which it states very clearly in the rulebook, and you'd have to be a real idiot to have played that wrong the first 4 or 5 times I played. A real idiot. Next, deal that same amount of damage to any Dahan on the land. Dahan have 2 health, and you must damage them as efficiently as possible, meaning you cannot spread out damage to multiple Dahan to avoid killing one. If 3 Dahan take 3 damage, 1 dies, 1 takes 1 damage, and the 3rd takes no damage. Dahan with just 1 damage may be flipped upside down to show that it is injured. Any surviving Dahan will now fight back. Each Dahan on the ravaged land will deal 2 damage to the invaders, divided as you see fit, even if they're injured. Dahan will deal damage to a ravaged land even if no damage was done by that ravage because of a defend action, but if the ravage was somehow skipped, the Dahan will also skip their attack. Next, perform a build action in the land types on the invader card in the space marked build. If there are invaders in the matching land type, a new structure will be built. If the land has more towns than cities, add a city. In all other cases, add a town. But if there are no invaders in that land, they're going to skip that build action, which is huge for you. Last, the invaders explore. Flip up the next card in the invader deck, adding 1 explorer to each of the matching land types that has a source of invaders. A source of invaders is a town or city either on that land or on an adjacent land, or the ocean. However, no matter how many sources of invaders there are, if there's a city on the land and it's surrounded by towns and the ocean, that land will still only get 1 new explorer. Advance the invader cards by 1 space. The ravaged land is discarded. The land that was built on will be the next land to ravage, and the land that was just explored will be the next to be built upon. Then move on to the slow power phase. It's just like the fast power phase, but for the blue turtle powers. Resolve any slow powers on cards you played in the spirit phase, or slow innate powers for which you have met the elemental threshold. But now you know how the invaders are going to behave next turn. They're going to ravage where they just built and build where they just explored. But remember, lands with no invaders aren't going to do any of those things. So if you can, say, push a new explorer off of a land, it's not going to build anything in the next turn, and it's not going to ravage there in the turn after that. In the last step of the round, time passes. Discard all power cards you played this turn. Remember, the only way to get those cards back is to choose your reclaim card's growth action. All elements are reset, and any injured cities, towns, or Dahan heal back to full health. Then begin again at the spirit phase with the growth action. Play continues in this way until you've destroyed the last invader, you've met the victory condition on the current terror level, or you earn the final fear card. If you've done any of these, you immediately win. However, you lose if at any time the final blight is placed on your land, if your spirit has no presence on the island, or when you need to draw a new explore card but the invader deck is empty. Now, once you have a better understanding of the game, and this setup, even with the blight card and without the power progression card, starts to feel a little too easy, there's another step you can take at the very beginning of the setup, which is to choose an adversary and or scenario. Adversaries and scenarios provide a much more challenging game. There's a table on page 28 that shows you just how much of a difficulty increase each option is.
Adversaries are specific groups of white people here to ruin everything.
In the base game, you get Brandenburg, Prussia, England, and Sweden, though other kingdoms can be found in expansions. When you're ready, the recommended first adversary to try is Brandenburg, Prussia, level 1. The adversary card shows an additional loss condition, as well as a stage 2 escalation. Those flag symbols I told you not to worry about? Well, now you gotta worry about them. This effect will be performed each time you reveal an invader card with a flag icon. Depending on your chosen difficulty level, you may have to deal more fear cards into the fear deck, thus making victory that much more difficult to attain. You may also have a specific order to set the invader deck so that you run into level 2 or 3 cards earlier. This shows the new game effect for the given level, but note that the level effects are cumulative. So if you're playing level 1, just play the effects of level 1, but if you're playing level 2, you'll use the effects of levels 1 and 2, and on and on. Scenarios change the island and its invaders' situation and may change the rules of the game kind of a lot. They have a difficulty rating and offer suggestions on spirit types to use to have either a harder or easier time. Now you can play with an adversary or with a scenario or both or neither, but remember to choose at the beginning of the game because any option is going to change the setup at least in some way. And if you do choose to ruin your good time by making it super complex with an adversary and a scenario, first of all, what's wrong with you? You were having a nice relaxing evening at home and now you're frustrated. Come on. But second, if ever a rule on an adversary card conflicts with a rule on a scenario card, the rule on the scenario card is going to take precedence. And that's how to play Spirit Island. If this video was helpful, or if you would like to help support me make more videos like this, there's a link in the description to buy me a coffee. You will not be buying me a coffee. You will be buying me more games to make more videos. Now, get off my island.
The Grouchy Nerd.
A river surges in sunlight, a spread of rampant green. I love the names in this game. I think if I were a spirit, I would be move swiftly towards whiskey, or hides from responsibilities.